In at number 5 we have Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road is an 11-mile road connecting Thornton and Brighton and is said to be the subject of several myths and legends, with many folks calling it one of the most haunted places in the entire world. One legend states that the road is quite literally the gates to hell. So there are in fact gates on Riverdale Road made of rusty iron, however it's the story behind them which is quite terrifying. People are said to visit these gates in hopes of seeing the Lady in White. According to legend, the man who built the gates lost his mind, and when he was finished, he burned down his entire home with his family asleep inside. Now visitors to the road and gates often report seeing the woman in white. She is said to be the wife burned in her home who was now searching the streets for her children and even her husband. Another legend is that you may very well get chased by some ghostly joggers. There are countless accidents that happen on Riverdale Road, especially involving pedestrians who decide to go on a run down the busy road. One jogger was reportedly hit while out for a run one day, and it is now said that his ghostly spirit now haunts the road. Another famous legend involving Riverdale Road is that of the bloody handprints. According to locals, a spirit is said to dwell on Riverdale Road, the spirit of a young boy. While on his way home he was supposedly struck by a car. Now his spirit paces the streets, smearing handprints on every street sign as he walks by. In at number 4 we have Boy Scout Lane. Boy Scout Lane is an isolated road located in Wisconsin. Over the years, dozens of ghost stories have become associated with the road, including the fictional deaths of a troop of Boy Scouts. The road was named Boy Scout Lane simply because the land was once owned by the Boy Scouts of America, who planned to use it to build scout camps, although this was never constructed, with the land remaining woodland. According to local legend, the road is named for a troop of Boy Scouts who were killed while on a camping trip in the 1950s or 1960s. In some variations, the murderer is the troop's scoutmaster. In others, it is said to be their bus driver, while in other tellings of the story the group of scouts leave their camp during the night and accidentally drop their lantern, resulting in the forest fire that kills the entire troop. Stories circulated with visitors supposedly feeling a strong sense of foreboding or being watched, as well as the sound of footsteps or breaking branches in the surrounding area. On top of that, others have reported seeing red or white lights, sometimes described as swinging lanterns or flashlight beams, ghostly buses or figures, and even childlike handprints on cars stopped in or driven through the area. Coming in at number 3 we have Clinton Road. Clinton Road is located in New Jersey, with the road running in a north-south direction beginning at Route 23 near Newfoundland. The road itself has gained notoriety over the years due to it being rife with paranormal occurrences and unexplainable phenomenon. Some of these include gatherings of witches, Satanists, and the KKK. It is also said that professional killers dispose of bodies in the woods surrounding Clinton Road. One legend is said about the Ghost Boy Bridge. According to locals, if you put a quarter in the middle of the road where the yellow line is, at one of the bridges over Clinton Brook near the reservoir, at midnight it will supposedly be promptly returned by the ghost of a boy who drowned while swimming below or had fallen in while sitting on the edge of the bridge. Besides the Ghost Boy, there have been other reports of ghosts. One person claims to have seen a ghost Camaro driven by a girl who supposedly died in a car crash in 1988. Another claims to have encountered 2 park rangers one night while camping near Terrace Pond. They were said to be 2 rangers who had died on the job in 1939. On top of that, according to the Travel Channel show Most Terrifying Places in America 2, phantom vehicles such as pickup trucks or even floating headlights not attached to any vehicle supposedly appear from nowhere in the middle of the night and chase drivers to the end of the road and then vanish into thin air. Coming in at number 2 we have Route 2A. Maine seems to be a stomping ground for ghostly activity, but no place seems to be more haunted than Route 2A, a rural section in the northern part of Maine. This stretch of road runs through Haynesville Woods, which is located near the town of the same name. Now, prior to the construction of Interstate 95, Route 2A was the most utilized road by truck drivers hauling potatoes out of Maine. It was also said to be incredibly treacherous in the winter months, with one turn that is nearly 90 degrees. Some may in fact be familiar with the song A Tombstone Every Mile. This was infamously written about Route 2A and is a reference to the many fatal accidents that have occurred on the road. Given the sheer amount of tragedies that have occurred on the road, it comes as no surprise that it now has a haunted history. One of the most notable stories coming from drivers on the deadly road discuss that of a young woman in need of help. She is said to appear seemingly out of nowhere and is in distress. Drivers report pulling over to help the woman and offer her a ride, which she is said to accept. While in the car, drivers say they feel uneasy and that there is a distinct chill in the air around them. As the car begins to near the end of the road, the woman disappears completely. Locals say that this is the ghost of a newlywed bride who was involved in a car accident with her husband in the same woods. The husband died immediately, but the woman was able to escape the car. However, while struggling down the street, she met her end by freezing to death on the side of Route 2A. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Archer Avenue. Sometimes referred to as Archer Road, this is a place outside of Chicago that is rumored to be incredibly haunted. The avenue was originally made famous by Finley Peter Dunne in his books and sketches about the fictional saloon keeper Mr. Dooley. However, it has become more infamous over time due to purportedly being haunted by Resurrection Mary, a vanishing hitchhiker. Resurrection Mary is well known around the Chicago area and has become a folklore of sorts that is known throughout many cultures. The legend itself is based outside of Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, with Mary considered to be one of Chicago's most famous ghosts. The story goes that Mary had spent the evening dancing with her boyfriend at the O. Henry Ballroom. However, at some point during the night, the couple got into an argument, resulting in Mary storming out. She left the ballroom and began to walk up Archer Avenue. She hadn't gotten very far when a truck struck and killed her, with the driver fleeing the scene. Her parents buried her in Resurrection Cemetery, wearing a white dancing dress and matching shoes. Now, since the 1930s, several people driving along Archer Avenue have claimed to have picked up a young female hitchhiker. They say that the woman was dressed in a white party dress and had blonde hair and blue eyes. When the driver's near the cemetery, the young woman supposedly asks to be let out, whereupon she disappears altogether back into the cemetery. Over the years, many researchers have attempted to link Resurrection Mary to one of the many thousands of graves in Resurrection Cemetery. One of the particular focuses was on Mary Bregovy, a woman who died in 1934 after being involved in a car accident in downtown Chicago. Coming in at 5, Arkansas, the Dog Boy. Now, the name may sound ridiculous, yes, but the story is truly chilling. If you find yourself at 65 Mulberry Street in the middle of a small Arkansas town of Quintman, you may very well encounter the hulking outline of a 300-pound, half-man, half-beast with glowing animal eyes. This is the Dog Boy. If you see him, walk quickly, as he is rumored to chase people down the street, biting at their heels, just like a dog. Now, this legend is rare, because the story behind the story may just be even creepier than the legend itself. Gerald Bettis, the only son of the Bettis family of 65 Mulberry, was reportedly a problem child, but not a cute one. No, this kid collected and tortured animals before turning his sociopathic focus to his parents, supposedly imprisoning them in their home and murdering his father. Bettis was eventually imprisoned for growing marijuana on his back porch and would later die in a state penitentiary in 1988 of a drug overdose. Spooky stuff. Coming in at 4, Colorado, Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road near Thornton, Colorado is crammed with horrifying legends to bring even the bravest paranormal investigator to their knees. Riverdale Road is notorious for having some of the most chilling and endless ghost stories, beginning with the fact that it is literally referred to as the gates to hell. Yeah, now the gates themselves are simply made of rusty iron, yet people travel from far and wide to visit them. This is because the man who built the gates lost his mind once they were finished. He then burned his entire mansion with his family asleep inside. Worse still, he was never caught or put on trial. As of now, people report that a lady in white walks the road close by the gates, with many assuming she is the man's wife, wandering, searching for her murdered children or even her husband. Another ghostly story goes that there are accidents that specifically happen to joggers all the time. Once upon a time, a jogger decided to take a jog along Riverdale Road and ultimately got hit. They sadly passed away, and rumor has it their spirit now haunts the road. People who walk the road are said to have heard a loud heartbeat and footsteps. If you drive by, you might also feel something hitting your car when there's literally nothing there. Now, there are so many more stories, but we'll end with the Native American shapeshifters. Now, what makes Riverdale Road interesting isn't just the road itself, but because the area of land that it cuts through is also rumored to be haunted. For hundreds of years, there have been countless stories about Native American shapeshifters roaming the land, with many passers-by spotting them on the road. According to reports, they take on different shapes and communicate with people in their own ways. They're also known to play tricks on anyone who walks down Riverdale Road, so be warned. Coming in at 3, New Jersey, The Watcher. Now, this legend could honestly be the script for a horror movie. Let me break it down for you. A family begin receiving ominous notes just days after they close on their dream home. Yeah, Spooky, right? Well, this story took off back in 2015 after a young family moved into a $1 million house in Westfield, New Jersey. However, they began to get letters signed by someone only IDing themselves as the Watcher, who claimed it was their duty to watch over the house, while also spouting weird lines such as, I quote, "Do need to fill the house with the young blood I requested," and "Who has the bedrooms facing the street?" Yeah, creepy. The writer also noted the make of the couple's car and the comings and goings of construction crews. He also observed that the couple had 3 young children, stating, I quote, "Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." Now, no one quite knows the truth behind the legend, whether it was a prank or a spooky neighbor, but what we do know is that the Watcher was never caught and still remains watching the house in Westfield, New Jersey. Coming in at number 2, California Turnbull Canyon. Turnbull Canyon is a 4-mile loop trail located near Whittier, California, and is part of Puente Hills Preserve. It lies in the northern central part of the preserve and is an east-west canyon with relatively steep drainage. Now natives call Turnbull Canyon Hatunga, or the place of the devil, and is supposedly where the ghosts of those slain for not converting to Christianity dwell alongside witches and Satanists who reportedly used the place to sacrifice children, whose spirits now walk along the canyon. According to other reports, Turnbull Canyon also houses the ghosts of 21 children who perished in a plane crash back in 1952. However, there are no existing records of the incident, so this may be local legend. However, what we do know is real is that in the canyon lies the remains of an old insane asylum that supposedly came back to life to kill a teen in the 1960s via long dormant electrical wire. Not only that, but there are cults, alien encounters, and gravity hills. The list goes on and on. Basically, if something unnerves you, there is probably a story about it going down at Turnbull Canyon. Now, its origin is pretty simple. Turnbull's evil dates back centuries. However, it wasn't until the site was established as a fur trapping site in 1845 that things started to get a little odd, and very quickly word of the canyon's evil terrors spread far and wide, making it one of the world's most visited places, but not for its beauty, but due to morbid curiosity. And finally, coming in at number 1, Virginia, the Bunny Man Bridge. This terrifying urban legend originated from 2 incidents in Fairfax County, Virginia in 1970, but very quickly spread through the Washington, D.C. area as well. Now, like all legends, there are many variations. Most involve a man wearing a rabbit costume who attacks people with an axe or a hatchet. Now, the legend goes that in 1904 a group of convicts were piled onto a bus to be transported from an asylum in Clifton, Virginia to a nearby prison. En route, however, one of the buses crashed and the convicts managed to escape. Thankfully though, the police were able to round up all of them, all but one. As their search went on, they began to find skinned, half-eaten bunnies in the woods and hanging from the overpass of Fairfax Bridge, now known as the Bunny Man Bridge. A year later, on Halloween night, several teens went to hang out under the bridge. Come morning, they were all found dead. Legend has it that if you hang out under the bridge on Halloween night, you will meet the same fate as the rabbits and the teenagers. Jump ahead to 1970, there were numerous police reports of people who had been threatened by a man holding an axe and wearing a white suit with bunny ears. Terrifying. A few other people also reported that the man in the suit threw an axe at them for trespassing near the bridge. To this day, there have been numerous reportings of the man with the axe, as well as the dead rabbits in the woods surrounding Fairfax Bridge, which is now known, once again, as the Bunny Man Bridge. Now, versions of the legend have varied over the years, particularly in the Bunny Man's name, motives, weapons, victims, and description, with some accounts stating that victims were mutilated and others that the Bunny Man is a ghost. However, that aside, the legend is absolutely horrifying and has prevented a lot of Virginia locals from wandering too close to the bridge. Coming in at number 5, Elisa Lam. Elisa Lam was a Canadian student at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver who was staying at the Cecil Hotel in downtown downtown Los Angeles back in February of 2013. However, her body was discovered in a water tank atop the hotel on February 19th. She had been reported missing at the beginning of the month, with maintenance workers at the hotel being ones to discover the body after guests had been complaining of water issues. Lam's disappearance had been widely reported, with interest increasing 5 days prior to the recovery of her body. Interest peaked after the LAPD released a video of the last time Lam was known to have been seen on the day of her disappearance by an elevator security camera. In the clip, Lam is seen repeatedly exiting and re-entering the elevator, talking and gesturing in the hallway, and even hiding inside the elevator, which itself appears to be malfunctioning. The video of course went viral on the internet, with many people finding the entire thing unsettling. Now, upon the discovery of her body, questions were raised surrounding her death, especially in light of Cecil's history in relation to the other notable deaths. Her body was found completely naked, with most of her clothes and personal effects floating in the water next to her. The autopsy report was released 4 months later with no evidence of physical trauma and states that the manner of death was accidental. The investigation into her death had determined how Lam died, however, it did not offer any explanation as to how she got into the tank in the first place. Doors and stairs that accessed the roof were locked, with only staff having the passcodes and keys. Coming in at number 4, the Icebox Murders. Charles Frederick Rogers was an American seismologist, pilot, and suspected murderer who dismembered the bodies of his elderly parents and put them in the refrigerator of his Houston home in what the media later dubbed the Icebox Murders. In 1965, Rogers was unemployed and living with his parents Fred and Edwina in the Montrose neighborhood of Houston. Rogers was often described as reclusive and was reported to have communicated with his parents by way of notes slipped under the door. Now, on June 23, 1965, 2 Houston police officers forced their way into the home after Edwina's nephew reported that his phone calls to his aunt were going unanswered. After searching the home, they found nothing. That was until they opened the fridge. Inside the fridge were the heads of Fred and Edwina, along with their dismembered limbs and torsos. Now, Rogers during this time was nowhere to be found, with police launching a search and a warrant was issued for him as a material witness to the crime. However, he was never found. In 1975, a Houston judge declared Rogers legally dead so his estate could be probated. The case still remains officially unsolved and Rogers remains the only suspect. Coming in at number 3, the Chicago Tylenol Murders. The Chicago Tylenol Murders were a series of poisoning deaths which resulted from drug tampering in the Chicago metropolitan area back in the 80s. The victims of the incident had all taken Tylenol branded capsules that had been laced with cyanide, unbeknownst to them. A total of 7 people died in the original poisonings, with several more deaths in copycat crimes. Now, on September 29, 1982, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman died after taking a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol, with Adam Janus dying not long after. No suspect was ever charged with the poisonings. However, New York City resident James William Lewis was convicted of extortion for sending a letter to Johnson & Johnson that took credit for those deaths and demanded $1 million to stop them. However, there was no evidence that he committed the crimes. A second man, Roger Arnold, was identified, investigated, and cleared of the killings. Lori Dan, who poisoned and shot an unknown number of people in the May 1988 rampage in and around Winnetka, Illinois, was briefly considered a suspect, but no direct connection was found. These incidents actually led to reforms in the packaging of over-the-counter substances and to federal anti-tampering laws. Coming in at number 2, we have Brandon Swanson. On May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson was driving his car home from celebrating the end of spring semester with his fellow students from Minnesota West Community and Technical College's Canby campus. However, on the way back, he drove his car into a ditch. He was fine and got out of the car and called his parents to get him. Unsure of his exact location, he told them he was near Lind, and so they drove out to pick him up. However, they never found him. Swanson remained on the phone with them for 45 minutes. That was until he abruptly ended the call after exclaiming, "Oh." Those were his last words. He has not been seen or heard from since. His parents filed a missing persons report the next morning, with the circumstances of his disappearance becoming a whole lot weirder, especially after his cell phone records were retrieved, which showed he had been near Porter, 24 miles from where he told his parents he was. This ultimately led to the discovery of his car near Taunton. Now, foul play has not been ruled out, but it is also believed that Swanson may have accidentally drowned by falling into the Yellow Medicine River. After extensive searches, his body was never found. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Bennington Triangle disappearances. The Bennington Triangle is a phrase that was originally coined by an author from New England called Joseph A. Citro during a radio broadcast back in the 90s, in which he labelled an area in southwestern Vermont as the Bennington Triangle, a place within which a number of people went missing between the 40s and 50s. The first person to disappear in the area was Mitty Rivers back in 1945. Mitty was a 74-year-old woman who disappeared while out hunting. She was guiding a group of 4 hunters up the mountain. However, on their way back, Mitty got ahead of the group and was never seen again. A search was conducted, however the only evidence ever found was a single rifle cartridge that was discovered in a stream. Many speculated that she had drowned when leaning over to retrieve the cartridge, however we will never know. Paula Weldon was next to disappear in 1946. Weldon was 18 years old and a sophomore at Bennington College. She set out for a hike on the long trail, with many people seeing her set out, including an elderly couple who were about 100 yards behind her. According to them, she turned a corner in the trail, and when they reached the same corner, she was gone. No evidence of her was ever found. The Bennington Triangle has baffled people for years, with it being discussed in season 3 of the television series William Shatner's Weird or What, as well as on the podcast Lore, which discussed the events of 1945 to 1950.